Imagine walking into a room and everyone smiles at you, but behind their eyes, there's no respect, only comfort, only convenience. You feel liked, maybe even admired, but something's missing. You speak, but your words float in the air like mist. You push back slightly, and people raise their eyebrows like you've stepped out of character. You've become what most people are conditioned to become: agreeable, soft-edged, non-threatening. And this works, until it doesn't. Because the moment your needs threaten someone else's comfort, the love dries up, the smiles disappear, and you're left wondering what it all meant. Niccolò Machiavelli, writing in the treacherous political trenches of Renaissance Italy, understood this dynamic long before psychology gave it language. He saw what happens when leaders, or individuals, confuse popularity with power. He watched rulers fall, not because they were unloved, but because they were underestimated. And he said it clearly: "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one of the two must be lacking." It's a quote often misunderstood, used to justify cruelty or manipulation. But that's not what Machiavelli meant. He wasn't glorifying tyranny. He was exposing the quiet truth behind influence. That power isn't built on how much people like you. It's built on how much they perceive they need to respect you. And in many cases, fear, when used wisely, is the signal that keeps that perception alive. But let's pause here, because we're not talking about fear as terror or intimidation. We're talking about something far more subtle and far more powerful. The kind of fear that's rooted in boundaries. The kind of fear that says, "I won't be mistreated." The kind of fear that silently communicates, "I don't need your approval to be who I am." It's a paradox, really. The people we often admire the most, the ones we say we love, are usually the ones we respect first. And that respect often begins with fear. A healthy fear. The fear of losing them. The fear of disappointing them. The fear of being judged by someone we admire. We don't call it fear, but that's what it is. This video isn't about turning you into someone you're not. It's not about dominance for its own sake. It's about teaching you how to reclaim the parts of yourself that were conditioned to stay small, to be agreeable, to never disturb the waters. It's about showing you how Machiavelli's brutally honest insights can apply to your relationships, your social life, your confidence, and the way you carry yourself in a world that subtly punishes strength disguised as kindness. Because power isn't what you project, it's what others perceive. And the moment you stop trying to be loved, you'll start being felt. Have you ever wondered why some people are admired even when they're cold, blunt, or even difficult, while others bend over backwards to be kind and still end up ignored? You've probably seen it. You've probably felt it. Maybe you've even lived it. Maybe you were the person who tried to be everything for everyone. The one who apologized before speaking, who made yourself smaller to make others comfortable. You were the one who avoided conflict, offered endless support, and said yes when you really wanted to say no. You were loved, or at least that's what it looked like on the surface. But beneath the warmth, something started to feel hollow. You began to notice that people expected your compliance. They took your time for granted. Your opinions became suggestions, and your kindness became currency they no longer felt obligated to repay. At first, you might have thought it was just bad luck, the wrong people, the wrong environment. But eventually, a darker realization began to emerge, one you didn't want to admit. You weren't being overlooked because you weren't valuable. You were being overlooked because you weren't feared. And again, I don't mean feared as in intimidating or dangerous. I mean feared in the sense that people knew, deeply and instinctively, that crossing your line would cost them something, that disappointing you mattered, that your presence came with consequence. Without that, love becomes a form of comfort, not reverence. Think about it. We don't deeply respect those who bend to every whim. We admire the ones who hold steady under pressure, the ones who know who they are and don't apologize for it, the ones who don't need you to like them to stand their ground, That's the type of person we fear losing. That's the person whose silence makes us nervous. And that's exactly what Machiavelli understood when he said, it's safer to be feared than loved. Because love can be cheapened. Love can be conditional. Love can be withdrawn the moment it's no longer convenient. Fear, when it's the fear of losing something real, cuts deeper. Now, you might be wondering, is it even possible to hold both? Can you be feared and loved? Can you be respected without sacrificing warmth? And what if you've already spent years building an identity around being the good one, the gentle one, the agreeable one? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this video. Because beneath Machiavelli's warning lies something far more liberating, a blueprint for reclaiming your presence, your power, and your right to be taken seriously without ever becoming someone you're not. Watch until the end. We're not just going to unpack why this shift matters. We're going to show you how to embody it, psychologically, emotionally, and philosophically. Let's talk about fear, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, psychological force that governs how people respond to you. You see, human beings are wired for hierarchy. Every social interaction carries an unspoken negotiation. Who leads? Who follows? Who adapts to whom? This happens beneath our awareness, faster than thought, and it's shaped by the subtle cues we project. Tone of voice, posture, eye contact, silence, timing. And one of the most powerful cues of all? Whether or not someone fears losing your respect. Now here's where it gets interesting. Fear, in this context, doesn't mean intimidation. It means emotional consequence. When someone senses that disappointing you has no real consequence, your emotional presence starts to lose its weight. Imagine two people. One always accommodates, laughs nervously, avoids difficult conversations, and never sets boundaries. The other speaks less, but when they do, it matters. They're kind but firm. They don't explain themselves unnecessarily. They have limits, and they enforce them calmly, without anger, without apology. Who carries more psychological weight? We all know the answer. The second person isn't feared in the traditional sense, but something in their presence commands pause, reflection, awareness. That is what Machiavelli was pointing to. Not terror, but gravitas. Psychologists today call this high-value signaling. It's the subconscious impression you create when others know you're not easily swayed, that your self-worth isn't up for negotiation, and that your time, your energy, and your attention are not freely given. People feel this even if they don't consciously understand it. In evolutionary terms, it's tied to social survival. In tribal life, aligning with strong, stable individuals meant protection and status. Aligning with weak or overly agreeable individuals meant risk. That wiring hasn't changed. It's just hidden behind modern smiles and social norms. And this is where love becomes dangerous, because when you lead with the need to be loved, you begin to perform, you begin to compromise, you begin to erase the very boundaries that create power. This doesn't just affect your relationships, it affects your self-concept. You start to believe that your worth is tied to how comfortable you make others feel. You lose your edge, your clarity, your ability to stand alone, and without realizing it, you become what Carl Jung might call a persona, a mask created for social approval, rather than a self forged in truth. What's the cost of this? Low-level resentment, chronic exhaustion, confusion about why people don't take you seriously. You become the nice guy who's overlooked, the sweet girl who gets dismissed, and eventually, you wonder if something's wrong with you. But the issue isn't your kindness, it's the lack of fear. Because in the absence of fear, of consequence, of boundary, of self-worth, love becomes shallow, it becomes performance, it becomes dependence. When Machiavelli said it's safer to be feared, he was challenging us to look deeper, to ask not, how can I be liked, but what makes me unignorable? Niccolò Machiavelli's world was not kind. He lived through betrayal, corruption, political executions, and the fall of republics. His book, The Prince, wasn't a manifesto for cruelty. It was a survival guide, a mirror held up to power, stripped of idealism, written for those who needed to lead in a world that did not reward innocence. That's why his most quoted phrase, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if one of the two must be lacking," still unsettles people. It cuts through moral idealism and asks, what actually works? Machiavelli observed that people are fickle, that love, while noble, is dependent on circumstance. People love you when things are easy, but fear when properly rooted, not in brutality, but in reliability and strength, has staying power. And he didn't stop there. He wrote, "Love is held by a chain of obligation, which men, being selfish, break whenever it suits their advantage. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment, which never fails." In modern terms, he was pointing out a truth that still echoes in relationships, leadership, and influence. People often choose convenience over loyalty. When you base your self-worth on being loved, you hand control to the very people who are most likely to abandon you when it's no longer easy to love you. Now, this doesn't mean you should seek to be feared for fear's sake. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who is only feared will inspire rebellion. The goal was never to dominate. It was to be respected enough that your presence is not taken lightly. And here's the philosophical twist. Machiavelli's realism isn't inherently dark. It's liberating. It frees you from the illusion that being good is enough, that if you're kind, others will be kind back, that the world operates on fairness. He invites you to see the world as it is and then choose how to act with eyes wide open. That's why his ideas pair powerfully with those of other great thinkers. Arthur Schopenhauer, for example, warned that people are driven more by will and desire than reason. He believed that true independence comes from being willing to go against the grain, even at the cost of social favor. Nietzsche too championed the sovereign individual, one who could transcend the need for approval and shape their own values. These were not isolated ideas. They were echoes of the same warning. If you need to be loved, you will be owned by those who offer it. But if you can be respected, feared for your clarity, your boundaries, your truth, you will walk through life with a kind of power that can't be taken away. And that's the real lesson here. Machiavelli didn't tell us to be heartless. He told us to stop mistaking love for stability. Because when the storm comes, it won't be love that keeps you standing. It will be your ability to command respect, to be the kind of presence that people don't forget. Not because you forced them to remember you, but because they had to. So what do you actually do with this knowledge? If you've spent most of your life trying to be liked, whether in relationships, at work, or even within your own family, Machiavelli's message can feel like a betrayal. It can feel like giving up on goodness, like abandoning the values you've tried so hard to embody. But this isn't about abandoning goodness. It's about anchoring it in strength. Because here's the hard truth. Goodness without strength becomes servitude, and kindness without power becomes performance. So let's shift the question from, how do I become feared, to something more precise. How do I become someone who is respected because I'm willing to be feared if necessary? Here's what that looks like in practice. You stop chasing comfort in every interaction. You let silence stretch. You allow others to feel discomfort when they cross a line, without rushing to fix it. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry intent. You don't try to soften every truth. You don't explain away your needs. You let your presence and your boundaries speak for you. You begin to say no without apology. And when someone pushes, you don't overreact. You hold the line, not with anger, but with stillness. Over time, this changes how people see you. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually, your energy becomes heavier, denser. People start to sense that you're not performing for their approval, that your kindness has limits, that your silence is not weakness, but choice. And that's when something fascinating happens. The very people who used to overlook you begin to take you seriously. Why? Because your presence now comes with weight, not threat, but gravity. This doesn't make you cruel. In fact, it makes your love more powerful. Because when people know you don't need their affection, they value it more. When they know your time is earned, not assumed, they treasure it. And when they know you're capable of walking away, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, then your love becomes real, not performative, not manipulative, just real. This is what Machiavelli meant by safety. Not that fear is superior to love in all cases, but that if you must choose, if the world forces your hand, fear will protect you when love fails. And that applies far beyond politics. It applies to your life, because in a world that tries to tame you, silence you, soften you into compliance, your ability to hold your center, to command respect, and to embrace the possibility of fear is what sets you free. Not from love, but from the need to be loved. From that place you can build true power, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that changes everything just by being there. The world will constantly offer you two paths. The path of the agreeable, the gentle, the lovable, and the path of the feared, the respected, the unignorable. Most will tell you the first is nobler, more virtuous. But if you've lived long enough, you know that virtue alone doesn't protect you, that love without respect dissolves in difficulty, that people are quick to turn when kindness is all you bring to the table. So the real question becomes, what kind of presence do you want to carry into the world? Do you want to be remembered as someone who was always nice, but easy to ignore? Or as someone whose words landed, whose boundaries mattered, whose silence spoke louder than most people's shouting? Because the person who is respected may not be loved by all, but they are never forgotten. And yes, this path comes with discomfort. You may lose a few smiles. You may provoke whispers. You may be misunderstood. But in return, you gain sovereignty. You gain peace, not because others approve of you, but because you no longer need them to. That's the paradox Machiavelli left us with. That to truly be free, to be seen, to be powerful, you must be willing to risk the one thing most people spend their lives chasing: approval. You don't have to choose between love and fear forever, but you do have to know this. When love is uncertain, fear protects you. When respect is missing, fear restores it. When influence fades, fear awakens it. And if you must choose, as Machiavelli said, don't hesitate. If this resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe to The Existential Edge for more videos like this.